If you think about the UAE for a moment, both today and historically, it's always been in the middle of several very important trade corridors. Even today, when you think about UAE, what makes UAE is 200 nationalities that live here, that do business from here, that fly through here. The ultimate ethos of crypto. It's all about the borderless connectivity that it enables. The technology underlying crypto in terms of blockchain and our ability to leverage the stablecoin technology and networks was the perfect complement.
Regulation is probably one of the biggest challenges in crypto.
The mindset of regulators, especially in this part of the world, has shifted, bringing efficiency to cross-border remittance and cross-border trade is ultimately to the benefit of the local citizen.
How do you see crypto adoption in the next 5 to 10 years, especially in the region of the UAE?
It's going to be led around.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lorena Nessi for CCN, and today I'm joined by Mohamed Raafi Hossain, co-founder and CEO of Fasset. We will discuss the industry-wide shift from crypto platforms towards crypto-native banking, the role of stablecoins as financial infrastructure, ethical finance at scale, and what real-world adoption looks like in the UAE. Hello, Raafi. Nice to see you here. Welcome to CCN.
Thank you for having me. Really excited and looking forward to today's discussion.
Yes, well, I have a lot of questions for you. So we're going to start from the beginning, which is tied to your personal history. So thinking about your experience as an advisor to the UAE Prime Minister's office, how did that role shape your view on what effective crypto and digital asset regulation should look like in practice?
Absolutely. Well, if you think about the UAE for a moment, both today and historically, it's always been in the middle of several very important trade corridors. So even historically, just the geographic location of UAE is right between Africa, Asia, Europe, to one degree. And the reality is that even from long ago, trade would go through, right? If today it's Jebel Ali ports, even before these lands were used in a similar manner. And even today, when you think about UAE, what makes UAE is 200 nationalities that live here, that do business from here, that fly through here. And if you think about at least in my opinion, the ultimate ethos of crypto, it's all about the borderless connectivity that it enables. And you can see that borderless connectivity, how it would juxtapose the UAE's positioning, both geographically, but from a trade corridor perspective as well. So when it came to the regulations and when it came to my role, it was really that the technology underlying crypto in terms of blockchain and our ability to leverage the stablecoin technology and networks was the perfect complement, not just to the UAE, but to the overall trade and remittance flows that we all do as individuals and businesses. And from that perspective, the regulation that we have today under VARA and under some of the regulations in ADGM, I think are very conducive to this new order of the way to do trade and bringing efficiency to cross-border flows of capital, assets. All of this is possible with the technology, but with also the type of regulation that we have here.
Absolutely. Yes, there are different challenges. We're going to start probably with the failures in traditional banking. Many crypto platforms are moving beyond trading toward neobank style services. So from your perspective, what structural failures in traditional banking made this shift almost inevitable?
Absolutely. Look, if you think about, UAE is a good example of this. You'll have someone move from, Indonesia to the UAE. They'll come here for 2 years and they'll need to go back. But during the 2 years here, they'll need to open a bank. But when they move out, they'll need to close that bank and open a bank back in their home country. So, banking historically has been very fragmented. On top of that, banks don't control the payment corridor. So you could have an Indonesian bank, you could have a UAE bank, you could have a Nigerian bank. Ultimately, you're still beholden to SWIFT, to IBAN, to different payment networks that even connect banks together. So not only do you have fragmented banking almost on a domestic level, then you have to go through correspondent banking networks, correspondent banking channels. And when you add that all up, it becomes disjointed, it becomes expensive, time consuming. so many different things. So, I think that's ultimately what led way to what we see today, and that's what's exciting about the future.
So that takes us actually directly to regulation, right? Because it is linked to these failures in traditional banking, but also regulation is probably one of the biggest challenges in crypto. And you have a very good example because recently Fasset secured a provisional banking license in Malaysia. So how does operating with a regulatory sandbox enable experimentation with zero interest banking products according to Sharia law? And that would be difficult elsewhere. How do you negotiate different regulations across the globe?
Yeah, look, it's not easy. Ultimately, regulations. We used to, I'm from LA, and we used to have a saying when I went to school in California that you know regulation follows innovation. In many parts of the world, innovation, people want innovation to follow regulation, but ultimately, in our space, it's a good example that the world is increasingly globalized, no matter what people say, and ultimately trade is supply chains require multiple countries. Capital has to flow in multiple countries to enable even the most simplest of goods and services these days. It's very different to what it was maybe 56 years ago. And that being said, we have the technologies that facilitate that. And I think, we're in a good position. I would say in 2026, going into this year, regulations may not have caught up with what needs to happen, but definitely the mindset of regulators, especially in this part of the world, has shifted. People are more progressive. People are looking to understand how can this benefit local economies, regional economies, global economy. And I think for us, our negotiation across multiple jurisdictions is very simple. Bringing efficiency to cross-border remittance and cross-border trade is ultimately to the benefit of the local citizen. It's ultimately to the benefit of the multinational or the small and medium enterprise that needs to operate in two countries. So when we go with this practical approach to regulators, it's actually, it's not as complicated as it sounds, because ultimately regulators, they're there along with their bosses, politicians, ministers, government officials, to facilitate a better standard of doing business and living standards in their countries. And for us, where the zero interest, the other way to look at it is that where the asset-backed finance comes in is that it's responsible, right? So we're not asking people to use crypto to do a 100x leverage trade on a meme coin. We're asking regulators to really think about the underlying rails and how we can move real asset flow on these rails and how we can make it efficient. And that efficiency ultimately benefits the bottom line pocket of businesses and individuals, which is in the interest of every government around the world.
Yeah, and as you said, regulation follows innovation, and we have a new landscape, which is the recent trend of crypto firms gaining trust bank status in the US. How does that change the global perspective for companies like Fasset?
Yeah, look, I think, ultimately, when the United States signals some sort of regulatory shift, it has domino effect across the world. And I think, the recent shift in the stance of the US government on crypto has benefited us. It's what allowed us to also get a global banking offshore license out of Malaysia that enables us to make our customers and our SMEs lives more productive with the technology that we have. I don't think that would have happened had it not been this shift in American policy. But now that it has, and now that regulations are forming around these trust banks that are getting these opportunities, it helps all of us across the world. And then the connectivity is unreal, right? Because now as a digital asset bank ourselves, it's easier to interact with our counterparts in places like America.
Great. So that takes me to adoption, right? Adoption is looking better, increasingly better, I would say. And there are many optimistic views about it, but actually when we talk about daily use, it's not the same everywhere. What do you think usually stops people from using crypto-based services as their primary financial tools? And how is that in the specific case of the UAE?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I would say one of the things that stops people from adopting crypto is that, there's still a stigma. And if you want to put it in a different way, there's still a reputation of what crypto is versus, what it could be. And I think, everything from, long, private keys to not understanding what, token number 4002 represents. still is, in my humble opinion, a strong barrier to entry. I do think some of the work that's happening now in terms of back-ending the use cases of crypto, but into parlance that is known to everybody, is supporting the adoption of crypto in different ways behind the scenes. And ultimately, I think that is going to be the future, quite frankly, right? I mean, the more practical use cases that we can appear in the everyday lives of individuals and businesses is what's going to ultimately drive adoption. Today, when you're going on a website, you no longer say, go to HTML / hyphen www. Oh, you don't say that, right? You just say, go to this website, right? So, and I think that's the direction that we're going. I no longer need to give you a 56 key wallet address. I'm just going to simply say, send me $10, to my hashtag, right? And I think that's the overall transition that we're seeing today.
How do you see that in a specific case of the UAE? Is it more day-to-day adoption of crypto in comparison to other places?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think, just the nature of UAE, you have a lot of different businesses from Africa, from the subcontinent, from Southeast Asia that are, they may be representing business interests back home, but they're set up and domiciled in one of the free zones here in UAE. And then there, so, what does that enable? There's a lot of local currency that needs to move into dollars or into dirhams. There needs to be an off-ramp, on-ramp. So I would say UAE is probably one of the leading, if not the leading practical use case jurisdiction in the world. Simply, once again, because capital does not stop here. Capital and value flows through here, and it flows through here extremely regularly, right? And the regulations that have been formed around that practicality has enabled UAE to be where it is today.
That's very interesting how the UAE might be a strategical place in the context of the global world, now placing itself in the world of crypto, right? As the next frontier, I would say. I've heard about the Fasset card integration with virtual USD IBANs that reduces several points of friction, as we were saying before. So does this suggest that mainstream users no longer need to understand private keys to benefit from crypto-based financial services?
Yeah, look, we've taken that opinion and we've given the choice to our customers. So for us today, our customers can accept it via, a Fasset tag. They do have access to their private keys and their wallet address that they can share as well. So we've taken the opinion that, depending on the level of sophistication and desires and needs of our customers, they can make that choice. And I think, Fasset card is just another practical way that, wherever choice they make, ultimately, the use case is to send financial value either across borders or in exchange of goods and services. And the card and our IBAN are representations of, real world utility. The infrastructure and the way you hold your money might still be on blockchain, but the way you interact with the world is based on the way the world operates. And it's still a card and IBAN world, ultimately. But in the middle of all of that is where the technology sits, and we try to be the bridge between both aspects of it.
Okay, great. And well, let's go to another question related to crypto adoption. For users who try crypto once, let's say, and then they stop, what tends to break first, you think? Trust? Is it trust? Is it usability? Or is it just relevance to their daily life? Or does it depend on where they are located geographically?
It's a great. Honestly, it's a phenomenal question. And, there are regional trends, right? So if you think about, crypto adoption, where I'm from in America, because the world is already dollar denominated, the average American doesn't need to use stablecoins. He or she does not need, truly, he does not need, tokenization to access US capital markets. You can just access it the way we've accessed it for decades. So the average, American in this example is going to be using crypto from a, investment standpoint. I would even say, in my opinion, from a speculative standpoint. And what stops their adoption is that, when speculative assets go bust, naturally, the next time you're a little bit more reticent to go back down that path, right? And we're in one of those market conditions right now where people are hesitant because, there was a bubble and it bursts and you just don't want to go back. Whereas, in a place like UAE or in Africa and Asia, a lot of people are not or have not entered crypto for speculative purposes. They've literally done it because that is the only way, or that is the best way for them to interact with the global financial system. And for those people, no matter what the market condition is, they're more likely to come back, even if they've had a difficult experience because that is the only alternative for them.
Well, that's a great question that almost covers my next question, talking about how some currencies and the use of crypto is inconsistent across different parts of MENA and Asia, and what role can crypto native banks actually can realistically play in closing this gap, without recreating the exclusion that there is already in the older systems or traditional ones.
It's a good question. I mean, look, ultimately, we have to kind of go back to what is a bank's role. The bank's role is to preserve your capital. The bank's role is to enable your capital to flow freely and swiftly and efficiently to where you want it to go. And the bank's role is to facilitate, economic opportunity. Crypto native banks, if they focus on those three aspects, which are very consistent with many different value systems, Sharia compliance being one of them, will continue to play a more leading role. But if crypto native banks are going down a speculative route, we've seen what happens to banks, even in countries like America, when speculation overtakes the use cases. We've seen banks in recent years, go down on speculative bets. So I think, the same rules apply. It's just a different set of technologies.
Great. How do you see crypto adoption in the next 5 to 10 years, especially in the region of the UAE?
Definitely, it's going to be stablecoin led, 100%. It's going to be led around the flow of capital versus the value of capital. Crypto adoption is making it easier and easier for people from all over the world to equally participate in the flow of capital. And I think that is what's going to lead over the next 2-3 years. More and more adoption of that as more and more people see the obvious value that stablecoins in particular play. And I think, backed from stablecoin, and stablecoins are, I would say, the first successful use case of this word that we all like to say, tokenization. And as stablecoins pick up, they're tokenized currencies, you'll see other tokenized assets, right? So that's kind of the way I see the future. I see less and less of the speculative bets. I see more and more adoption of practical use cases.
Brilliant. Well, let's hope that you are right. Is there anything else, Raafi, that you would like to add before we close the interview?
No, look, I think what's happening now is that, with more and more adoption, I would say, in broad terms, the East, the West is adopting those technologies, which what does that do when East and West, start using the same set of technologies? Creates a new type of order, a new type of system. And I think that's the transition that we're seeing now, and it's extremely exciting.
It is, yes. We'll see what happens in the next few years. Hopefully,
Indeed.
An increment, right, in adoption and use. And as you say, I think definitely
Absolutely.
stable coins are going to be so key. And we're going to see it in the next coming years. Thank you so much, Raafi, for joining us today at CCN.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That was Raafi Hossain, and I'm Dr. Lorena Nessi for CCN. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.